Let me first start by saying that this is one of those books, the book we're going to talk about today, that I feel like they should make it into a horror movie. And the book's name is Horror Movie, so it would be appropriate. The Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. This book is disturbing and deranged. So this follows the story of these friends who end up making a movie together, a horror movie. And the main character had met in college this girl, Valentina Rojas. They had known each other and hung out a bit and then, kind of lost touch. And one day, out of nowhere, she calls him up and she's like, hey, do you want to meet up and chat and da 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 da? And so they meet up. And then she tells him about this movie that her and her friend Cleo are going to make. And I think Cleo's there too. She kind of describes, what it's going to be about, but also said she wants to leave him in the dark. Like, she only wants him to see the sides or like the day's scenes kind of script for what's going on to like keep him in character. He's going to be what they call the thin kid. He's not going to have a name. In the movie, you won't really be able to see his face. It'll be blurry. He'll be there. He'll be tall and gangly in the background. And the other characters are basically kind of like going to play themselves. And it'll be Valentina, Cleo, and Cleo wrote this, and Valentina is really into film. She's going to direct it, and this other guy, Carson. And those three had been friends since, I think, since high school in actual life. So they go way back. And so you get you come into the story, and it's the main character, the guy who played the thin kid, it's him. Everyone attached to that movie had died in some messed up, weird way. So it seems like maybe that movie was cursed. And now, 30 years later, they want to make a reboot of this movie. And so, he's talked to different directors and whatnot. And it's kind of a very disturbing thing for him to bring himself into this world. He doesn't really want to, but in a weird way, he does at the same time. So he ends up talking to this one director, Marley Bouton, and she actually wants to do the movie as close as possible to the original. And the thing about this movie is it was never released because of the tragic crap that was all surrounding it and what happened. They never released it to the public. What had happened was Valentina in 2008, the movie was made in 1993. She released some stills, just a couple stills from the movie, the screenplay, and then 3 scenes onto YouTube. And it started to gain traction and get a cult following. And that's what brought the attention to it. That's what made these directors and different studios want to put this out because horror is hot at this moment in time. And so a lot of people want to make this movie. And so this director, and specifically though, wants to keep it real and very close to what originally happened and not F with any of that stuff, and make it too super Hollywood or whatever. But you still have all this weird tragedy attached to it. And throughout the book, you go back in time, right? And you see what happened. And as the main character, the thin kid. So in the present time, he's 50 years old now. But then he was in his 20s. They were all kind of in their 20s, except for, I think, there was Dan, the guy who's the director of photography and film. They were all super young. And this movie is very disturbing. You have these teenagers, and in the beginning of the movie, they're walking through this weird woodsy area, and they come to this old abandoned school. And then they go into the classroom, right? And they go in there, and they have Cleo's holding this paper bag. And so they all walk in there, and the thin kid follows. That's their friend, but you never know his name. He's just a thin kid. His face is blurry. You don't really see it. And so they take him to this room, and then they just kind of make him undress down to his underwear, and then they send him into the closet and they leave him there. And he just does whatever they say for whatever reason. I don't know. Did he want to fit in? Did he just want to, do good for his friends? I don't know why people do the things that they do, but stuff just escalates and gets more horrific, the things that these teenagers do. And this kid just stays there until they I guess they kind of feed him at some point and I don't know, they start doing really bad crap to him. And so it's very disturbing and effed up. But it's also the psychology and the psychological effed upness of it makes it a very addictive read. I really liked characters. I liked the storyline. I liked how you did get to see what actually happened. You get to read the scripts as the kid, the thin kid, reads them and becomes more and more of this character. And what's weird too, okay, before they send him into the closet, I forgot the most important part. Oh, so there's this creepy reptilian weird mask, and Cleo had found it. And this is outside of before the movie even starts. Cleo said she had found it in this abandoned old school. At first, she thought it was a head on the floor, and she ran away and like got out of there. But then she went back out of curiosity, and she found it, and it was on like a weird styrofoam mannequin head, and it was this weird reptilian mask thing. And doing a ton of research over the years, the main character, he was never able to find anything that looks like it or anything similar. So this weird mask that appeared there out of nowhere, and they use it in this movie. After they make him undress, they put this mask on him, and he becomes this like creature monster and what these teenagers kind of make him into. It seems like this film infiltrated them all as a whole and kind of just cursed them all. And the fact that they're going to remake this movie is a bit worrying for what about the new cast and crew? How's that going to go for them? And then having the one guy who's still alive after everyone else basically from that time is dead, either of like car accidents. I think there was someone had a heart attack, another one had pancreatic cancer. It is truly a weird and deranged and addictive read. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I liked the line in it, which was actually drawn to my attention on Instagram. I had posted a picture of it that I was reading it, and someone said how much they really liked it, and it was still in their thoughts like a few days later, kind of thinking about it. And there's a line in it that says, "Movie is not for everyone. This movie is for some of us." Because there's parts in the movies that just they try not to go the typical way that horror movies do. You know, like every 10 minutes there's a jump scare, or you know, maybe the villain of the movie like does something that makes you feel a little bit of empathy for them. They don't do any of that. They try to make it's like as effed up as possible, and just the weirdness and psychologicalness of it. And the characters that are playing themselves are kind of like not really acting, but yet acting. But I don't feel like they were acting. I feel like what was coming across and some of the stuff that was so evil and effed up was like parts of them. Like you have Cleo who wrote the screenplay, and she, I don't know if you would call her, she was very depressed, but she was also maybe suicidal, but not like on the edge of that. And then you have Valentina, who seemed to have a bit of a sadistic streak to her, you know, and didn't always play things the safest way. If you like Paul Tremblay, this book is absolutely fantastic. I love horror that has to do with like films and in that environment, for the world that was created in this. It was messed up and it was fantastic. I would highly recommend it. Another book I really loved of his was The Cabin at the End of the World. If you haven't read that one either, it's pretty awesome. Also, if you want to hear a bit about it, stick around. That'll be the next video coming up at the end of this that you can click into. Also, if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.